maybe it seems to me like the fact that we just don't have access to all of what naturalism is almost seems to be like a defeater for any supernatural claim, whether that's
Yeah,
like a miracle claim, like a Marian apparition,
yeah,
or a UFO sighting. But then
yeah,
a second question, I'll kind of pose
yeah,
them both because they're a little
yeah, yeah,
related. Um, we're talking about like the edge of what the human body can actually like interact with. So
hmm
how much of this is unfalsifiable? Um, if if we can't really interact with it, um, can we ever hope to understand it better than we do today? Was Carl Jung's book on the UFO, the absolute pinnacle? We just can't move past that because of the limitations of our brains. And if that is the case, like where do we go from here? Because we have this whole like crazy world that we have no hope of ever interacting with or understanding. So that
yeah,
it's like a daunting task. What do we do with that?
yeah. Okay, what was the first question again?
So the first question was
For that
just
core point.
um,
Yeah.
it seems to me like we have almost defeated any kind of claim to the supernatural
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
by just
yeah,
admitting
yeah,
our limited ability to
yeah,
interact with the natural world.
yeah. I think what much of this does is helps us see how the framing of things into discrete categories like the natural and the supernatural was not a very good idea in the first
Hmm.
place. Like this is
Yeah.
like Jeff Kripal's point is like the title of the book he wrote with Whitney Strieber is the super space natural. And his point is to argue that no, like what this stuff is showing us is nature is super, that nature is full of things that don't really fit very well into our like consensus picture. Okay. And it's kind of always been that way, right? And it's probably always going to be that way. Do you see what I mean?
Hmm.
And so for me, and I said that, and even independently of the UFO phenomenon, this is something I'd already come to. Is I had started to think like, what are we even doing when we distinguish between nature and supernature, which I think is a distinction you don't find in the Greeks, right? Really,
Hmm.
okay. And I think this is like a lot of like what like phenomenologists like Heidegger are trying to get us over, right? I think some like someone like Jung is trying to get us over. I think very interesting contemporary idealists like Bernardo Kastrup are trying to get us over is to see that this distinction between the natural and the supernatural, right? The material and the immaterial is actually, like everyone loves to say, yeah, like Descartes got it wrong, dualism's false, but then we still like parse the world into these categories, right? What would it be to really get over that, right? Okay, now, and this kind of gets to your second question. I don't know. I don't think anyone does, right? Because it's so ingrained in us to like to, to parcel things up this way. Okay, and your latter point, which I think is great, okay, to what degree, if this is beyond the pale, to what degree can we ever understand it? I don't know that we can, right? And so now, yeah, and so now it seems though, like we do live in a reality that is far less comfortable to us,
Yes.
right? Because we cannot say our understandings are like going to ever get all the way to the bottom or to the top of it. Like there seems to be another player in the picture that is very ill behaved with respect to our expectations, right? Whether we see it as UFOs or ghosts or apparitions or what have you, right? There's another player in the picture, right? Do you see my point? And I do think it raises these kind of like troubling things. Like, well, okay, if if it looks like we're not tuned to really get the whole of the real, then what the hell is out there? I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do we do with that? I mean, do we just kind of throw our hands up in the air and say, I can't know, you know, here's the sliver of reality that I can know and understand, and then here's the sliver of reality that like actually exists, and so I only know a tiny portion of it, so I just throw my hands up in the air.
Yeah.
Like it almost seems like we're kind of just like left floundering in this massive ocean with no idea of what direction we should start swimming. It just kind of seems like an easy place for us to drown.
Yeah. No, I mean, see, that this is kind of my point why I think a lot of people are underestimating the significance of the phenomenon, right? Because it seems like it's suggesting something like that, right? Like, okay, like our consensus view of the real, whatever it is, seems to not really be the whole story, or maybe even like a very good, like significant proportion of the whole story, right? That's why I think philosophically it's more troubling than just if the aliens showed up, should we baptize them, right? You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And that's what I find rich about it, is it raises this kind of like hypothesis. It's very hard for us to deal with. Yeah. And I don't claim to know the answer to it, right? Um, I don't.
So how would we go about what would change in the way that we should um so you and I have this conversation. I come to this new understanding that reality is, potentially way bigger than what I had thought before this conversation.
Yeah.
But I throw my hands up in the air and I kind of say, okay, but it's unfalsifiable in the sense that I cannot interact with that portion of reality.
Or
So
can I stop you there though? Right.
yeah.
So I don't think. I mean, clearly we do interact with it somehow, right? It shows
Yeah.
up. People are seeing weird crap, and they've been seeing weird crap for centuries and centuries, right? And like in some of these cases, it's pretty clear people are coming away with injuries from these things, right? Okay, that are pretty well verified, right? There are like physical traces of these things, right? Whether it's radar or FLIR and stuff like this. You know what I mean? So to say that we don't interact at all with it, like people saw something at Fatima. I think it's hard to say people saw nothing at Fatima, right?
Agreed.
Do you know what I mean?
As a skeptic, agreed.
Something weird does or has gone on at Lourdes, right? Okay, so but what my point is like so it does seem to interact with us, but our ability to make sense of it seems really, really limited, right? Um, and so like there's a metaphor that or it's an example that Andy Clark uses in his book Being There, and he's taking it from a biologist from like in the early 20th century. But there's like a certain kind of there's this notion in phenomenology called the Umwelt, right? Which is like it gets translated as environment, but I think that's maybe a little unfortunate translation. And the notion of the Umwelt is like Clark uses the example of this tick to make the point. And there's a certain kind of tick that can like time its jump on you by the amount of skin acid that's sensing in its environment. Okay. And so it structures its world around that sense experience, right? And I think you and I privately have talked about this before. And so like that skin acid's in both the rooms we're in right now. And so think of all the phenomena that would be revealed to you if you could sense the world in terms of skin acid. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I like, but you wonder like, so what happens when like, so we've got this Umwelt that's built around our basic sensory package. Okay. Um, but there's no reason to think that's the only possible sensory package, right? Clearly there's other ones.
Mhm.
And who knows what would be sensed if you had this other sensory package, right? But still like we and the tick interact, right?
Yeah.
But not really meaningfully to each other, right?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So I mean, I think once you make that move, like, okay, what is in this room with me that I can't sense, right? That doesn't make any sense to me, even if I could. Do you see what I mean? And so like I
Yeah.
wonder if like what you're getting with us in the UFO or apparition or something like that is just like it's the ticks and the humans bumping into each other in ways that don't make sense to each other, right?
Yeah. And not to get like too weird with this analogy, but
There's no such thing.
good. I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
How much do you think that the tick actually understands what we are?
Not at all. Well, I mean,
And
would,
so,
yeah,
and it's
yeah,
that question,
yeah.
like, yeah, the tick can interact with us in some way, but has no understanding of what we are. Is
Right.
there some kind? Am I onto something here with an analogy almost to Fatima, where like we interacted with something at Fatima, we just have no idea what it is. In the same way that the tick interacts with us in the sense that it can detect us and it can even like eat part of our body, but it doesn't know what we are.
It doesn't know what we are. Yeah.
Is that? Am I being a little unfair, or am I onto something?
No, I think that's exactly what I have in mind here.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
That's like deeply unsettling.
It's unsettling. Yeah. No, I find the phenomenon unsettling. It's unsettling.